But let's get into the official movie review.
Yes.
The Led Zeppelin documentary. We were very excited to see it. And I think I speak for both of us. We'll dive deep here, but 10 out of 10 recommend.
Absolutely.
So good.
And I guess, should we kind of warn, kind of spoiler
alert?
Because we'll get into some of the highlights there.
Yeah.
Because and this is, keep in mind, it's a documentary about Led Zeppelin. So if you're a hardcore fan, I'm sure you know most of this stuff already.
You probably know 90% of it.
But the presentation of it is worth seeing alone, and the storytelling in this.
For sure.
But yes, disclaimer, this is a spoiler review or discussion, just talking about some of the things we saw in the movie that we liked, didn't like, whatnot. So, yeah, spoiler.
Let's start with our takeaways. I think my takeaway was I went in a massive Zeppelin documentary, Zeppelin fan, thinking I knew most everything about Zeppelin.
Yeah.
I came out of it going, I knew most of that. But what I didn't realize, or maybe I didn't give enough credit to, is Jimmy Page as a producer / composer.
Yeah.
Like the brilliance in his head and how he got that out. I mean, you could make an argument that Zeppelin is almost Jimmy Page's band. Like the way he put everything together, he got them signed, the way he protected them, making sure they didn't release singles, that they were all albums. Like that to me, I thought was just so incredibly impressive.
Yeah. So for me, just full disclosure, I'm not the biggest Led Zeppelin fan. I didn't grow up as a big Led Zeppelin fan in my household. My parents' all-time favorite band were the Rolling Stones, so we grew up on the Rolling Stones. Yeah. I feel like that era, you were either like Beatles, Rolling Stones. I think the more debate is always between Beatles and Rolling Stones, but then Led Zeppelin came right after that. So in our household, it was like Rolling Stones first as far as the classic rock era of those bands. So I didn't know a lot about the band in general, just other what I grew up watching or learning from MTV or VH1, those old specials in the 90s, various specials. So, and then working here at the Bone for the last 20 years, of course, I've heard all the major Led Zeppelin singles, big songs that we played on this station. We used to have Get the Lead Out, all that stuff. So that's all just been my exposure to Led Zeppelin. I don't know the full history, how they got started, all that stuff. So for me, the majority of this movie was just eye-opening.
It was an education.
It was, for me, education. So I think if you're a casual fan, if you're like I say, if you're a hardcore Led Zeppelin fan, a lot of this stuff
you won't be shocked.
Won't be shocked. Might not be new to you. But for me, or casual fans, you're going to learn a lot from this movie. So that alone is worth seeing. And I just love the documentary. It's just really about just the early years. Literally, I think the first year and a half, 2 years of the band's existence, really that's the focus of this movie. I love that. First off, I don't know if you caught on this. I didn't realize this till afterwards. There was only 4 people speaking in this movie. It was just the 4 band members. Yeah. No outside voices.
No narrator. No
other
journalist.
It's just the 3 living members, Robert Plant,
story.
Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, and then they found this unreleased, never heard before interview of Bonham.
Wasn't that cool to hear his voice?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, as soon as his voice came through those big speakers, you were like, whoa.
Because I guess John Bonham rarely gave interviews before. Yeah. And
there was some personal stuff in there.
And that how crystal clear that audio was.
I know. I thought we're audio nerds. I thought the same thing.
And the fact a lot of stuff he was talking about in that interview was great, like like in the interview, I guess he's just really reflecting about the time in the band, why he loves the band, everything. So this interview is great in hindsight to talk about the band in the past. So what he was talking about just mixed in perfectly with the flow of the conversation.
It really did. It was almost like it could have been reflective 2025.
Yeah, if it was like him today talking, if he was alive today,
he might have said some of the same sentiment.
Yeah.
You know what I loved about that part particularly was watching the faces of the others listening to him speak.
And I was going to say the conclusion or the last scene.
Yeah.
Just the way that was shot of the 3 final members, like they were doing like that wraparound shot for each of them.
Oh, I have the goosies.
You get the goosebumps just watching that, and just the 3 of them. I think for all 3 of them, that was probably the first time they heard his voice in a long time.
A long time like that.
So, I mean, Jimmy Page was smiling, leaning forward. Robert Plant, like all 3 of them were just smiling, like hearing their friend talk about how much he loved being in Led Zeppelin and loved being in a band with those guys.
It was really cool.
So for them, even at their older age, it was just, I think it probably gave them in that moment a new appreciation of what they accomplished together.
And after all this time has gone by.
Yeah.
You know, and after the public, us, the fans, desperately would love to have them back in the realm.
And what was interesting also, it was that the first, I don't know, 30 minutes of the movie, it was about them, just their history as kids, where they grew up, coming out of post-World War II, and just what was life in England at that time, and just discovering themselves, how they got into music. Yeah. You and I were breaking down all these what ifs. Like, it was like a perfect storm, all these different little scenarios that played out for the band to come together. As far as Jimmy Page, it was just one day at school, a friend of his had a guitar, and he was just playing, and he said, I have one too. And the friend said, bring it to school. I'll tune it up and I'll show you a few things. And then that opened his doors, the gateway for him to start playing guitar all the time.
Isn't that crazy?
So it makes you wonder, if that guy never brought that guitar to school that day, never exposed Jimmy Page to the instrument, would Jimmy Page ever have been Jimmy Page?
Because after that, he was obsessed.
Yes.
Like, he played it all the time, never put it down. I tend to think, I romanticize life in this way. Like, I tend to think what's meant to be will be. I think he would have found his way another way.
True. Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. Like, the way the cosmos sort of shifted to align for these four individuals. And this movie, if nothing else, is absolute proof that sometimes you get lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
You find four people that just click together, and that chemistry, it's like it was written in the stars. It was meant to be. They knew each other in another life. Whatever you want to call that, it really is lightning in a bottle.
It really gave me a whole new appreciation for the band. Like I said, growing up, I was not the biggest Led Zeppelin fan, but now I have much more respect for them.
Yeah.
And I want to do more of a deep dive on who they are, what happened. So just disclaimer as well, this movie ended right after their Royal Albert Hall concert, which was end of 69.
I believe so, yeah.
So it doesn't get into, this is already 2 hours. 2 hours, that's where they get to.
Right.
So they get into the 70s and what led to the band breaking up in 1980.
Royal Albert Hall was 1970.
Okay. So it really is the first couple years of the band. So it was just cool. Like, you and I were talking, like, each band member, they called it like a super group, because each of them represent like a different role in the band. Jimmy Page, as you said, he's like the music genius, the music savant. Like, he had the vision, the sound, what Led Zeppelin is, coming off his time in the Yardbirds. Like, I didn't realize initially they were just the new Yardbirds, but then they decided to rename themselves. And their manager, I didn't realize how big of a role he had. And
he was the heavy.
That could have been a whole separate like storyline of how he got things done for them. But yeah, John Paul Jones, he was like the music professional in that
Classically
band.
trained.
He started with the church, and then he was a session musician.
His parents were vaudeville actors and performers.
So he was naturally in a performance household.
Grew up that way,
Yeah, and then him and Jimmy met through the session work. But then John Paul Jones, like, he can just play along to what everyone else is playing, and he knew how to respect other people's time and give them their moment to shine. How Bonham was playing.
Dude, that was such a cool moment. Like, of course, we're sitting there with two drummers, my husband and my son, and I know a lot about drums, although I can't play them. That's all I hear. Jay and I talk so much about him, and I've been with him for almost 20 years. But it was fascinating whenever John Paul Jones was saying that he had such a love for Bonham's right foot, for that kick drum, and he wanted to make space for it. And so, like, just knowing that, just being such a professional that to, like, pull back and how to give that space and how to put it all together.
Yeah.
Those pieces. That's what I mean when I say lightning in a bottle. Like, that doesn't just happen with a group of four guys that come along.
And it was just cool, like, Robert Plant, his role as, the sexy front man.
Yeah.
Jimmy Page pushed him to be a better writer, lyric writer. And as you said, for Bonham, he was the wild card. He gave the band their edge,
He was
the animal. Yeah, all that stuff. So them coming together and just them meeting each other. And Robert Plant got Bonham in. And it was cool. Plant, the whole documentary kept calling him Bonzo.
They were so close. Yeah.
And that was the thing. They come together and they talk about their first meeting and practice. Like, to be a fly on that wall for that first meeting at that, like, downstairs area, wherever that was, wherever they performed at.
Yeah.
But just them coming together, introducing themselves to each other. And then there's was it Train Kept a Rolling?
Train Kept a Rolling, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. Old blues song from 1951, I think. 50.
So Aerosmith covered as well.
It, yeah.
So it was
cool. Done by Tiny Bradshaw originally.
It would have been amazing just to see them work out their first song. The electricity of them playing together for the first time.
And of which John Paul Jones didn't even know that song.
Yeah.
He was like, how does it go? And so Jimmy Page walked him through it, and he was like, okay, I can figure that out.
Yeah.
What?
Amazing.
I know. It's incredible.
And just for them to start recording after that. Like, to me, Led Zeppelin 1, I didn't realize they recorded that on their own.
With the time. And I
Yes.
love how Jimmy talks about that. And I think that is the secret sauce and also sometimes what hurts debut albums. And what I mean by that is because a lot of debuts do have the time, they have the time, they have the money, they have the energy, they have that fresh creativity. And so you'll hear a lot of people that are music snobs be like, nothing past the debut album. But that's why, because Zeppelin created this masterpiece. And like you said, like Jimmy Page had it all planned out. He heard it, not just songs, but he heard the in-betweens and he wouldn't split it up into singles and all these things. So that is like such a priceless thing to have and go to a label and go, here's this chunk of awesomeness, for lack of a better word. Don't split it up. Screw you.
Take it as it is.
Take it as it is or don't take it at all.
It'd be just that they showed that photo, Jimmy Page and their manager with Atlantic Records rep, and they're signing the contract. And the agreement is you're going to release this as it is, as we present it to you on a silver platter as a gift.
Yeah.
Just play it as is. And then they were telling the record label and then like underground FM radio.
Yeah.
They have to play the full album. So side one, and then when that's done, take a break, commercial, whatever it is, come back and play side two. It's like, that's unheard of. Like, but the fact that the label agreed to it and they were an unknown band, that's a risk. Like, that's unheard of by today's standards.
It would never happen. Can you even imagine any kind of band, even if they just wanted one single to get looked at, to walk into any label and go, this is how you're going to do it? Like, they'd be like, F off.
Yeah, four guys walking into a record label and be like, hi, we're so-and-so. Sign us. Here's our album. Just release it as it is.
Yeah.
Do it.
Thanks.
Like,
thanks, bye. Like, what?
How? And that makes me wonder, there has to be a lot more with the band manager, just like how he strong-armed that deal, whatever the case may be. But it's amazing. And then the next year, 1969, that was amazing. They got big first in America before England.
And then they went home and England like didn't want anything to do with them.
Yeah, but it was cool how the West Coast or San Francisco, that was the standard of if they made it or not.
That was so cool. Yeah, they had their show at the Fillmore West and they were like, if this show doesn't make it, you're done. Yeah. And they knew. Can you imagine the amount of pressure?
Totally.
Like walking onto that stage and going, okay, it's all or nothing. But Jay pointed it out, and he's the musician of the group of us, and he pointed out, he said what made them work. In fact, he told Cody this on the way home.
Okay.
What made Led Zeppelin so special is they played like they had to every time. They lived for playing. It was a life or death situation. And for Robert Plant, it was. He was homeless at the time. So
those old photos of him, like, with those signs that like legalize weed or whatever it was. Yeah. But he's a total hippie. Yeah, from the 60s.
Yeah. And he was homeless. So he was living like I always say, playing for your supper. Like Janis Joplin played for her supper. She was screaming, she was singing, like she had to literally survive. And that's what Zeppelin did. And it makes all the difference in the world, whether there were 5 people in the room and you saw some of those early shots. Can you imagine being in the room for Zeppelin's first gig and some of those people look bored?
Or just something that...
Just like sort of like, what's happening?
Let me ask you this, because I saw one review and the guy thought how many times the movie stopped down was a little annoying. How they're telling the story, everyone's talking, and then they stopped and did like they showed like a full performance.
Oh, okay.
And then they did the performance. After that was done, get back into the storytelling. I enjoyed the performances.
If I heard him, I would discount his entire review.
Yeah, because for me, it's like, okay, this is old footage I've never seen before.
Yes.
And then on the big screen, those big speakers.
You feel like you're there.
It feels like I'm watching a live concert of Led Zeppelin. So for me, I appreciate the live performances.
Yes.
And I think if you're a Led Zeppelin fan, you would totally dig this.
Agreed.
So it was just interesting. Yeah, like their early performances, people didn't know how to react. Like the little kids and stuff, people putting fingers in their ear. Like they're a menace to society at that point. And then what was the other thing? So they start touring America and they immediately start working on Led Zeppelin 2 while on the road, going to different studios in the cities that they're playing in. So I'm like, what kind of long work days are they having? They're recording during the day, go play at night somewhere.
Nonstop.
And release Led Zeppelin 2 by the end of 1969. So 2 albums in 1 year.
And they blew up in 1 year. Like the whole movie takes place outside of introing them and what they're about as kids growing up. But the whole movie really shows what they accomplished in 1 year.
Yeah.
And when you think about that now, I mean, you're just like, it's absolutely stunning to think about it in that. And it is important to point out, if you go see this, like a lot of people have been surprised, I've seen online, that it does end there. But it is called Becoming Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
There are a couple of things that I've done some reading on this in particular, but there's a couple of things that Robert Plant specifically didn't want to talk about.
Okay.
He didn't want to talk about the death of his child.
Okay.
He didn't want to talk about Bonzo's death
Yes.
because there were a couple of things that happened that led to the end of Led Zeppelin. Obviously, Bonham dying, and there was Robert Plant just could not go on.
Yes.
He had no desire. That was his best friend, brother, more like anything, and he could not get past it. Did not want to play with anybody else. Like there just was not an option.
And I could just tell, and you and I and Jay, we talked about this at dinner. When you told me that Robert Plant doesn't like talking about Bonzo's death, which makes sense. They were like besties.
Yeah.
They knew each other from a young age and started together. The workaround, I guess, for them in this movie was Robert Plant kept saying Patricia, Bonham's wife, kept warning him, do not go play with Robert Plant. It's going to lead to bad things. Yeah. And Bonham's like, no, this is my opportunity to go play. Because they originally had a different drummer lineup, but Robert Plant was insistent, I want Bonzo.
It's this guy or no one.
Yeah. And so he left his other band that he was in and started with Led Zeppelin. And unfortunately, as we could tell, it went down this downward spiral for John Bonham, the partying, the wildness, everything ultimately led to his death. So I wonder if Robert Plant to this day feels guilty for Bonham's death. Like, if I never encouraged him to join Led Zeppelin, he might be alive today.
I think we all can sit here and say we know that he shouldn't do that to himself.
Yeah.
Like intellectually, that makes no sense. But emotionally, it makes every bit of sense in the world. And you can see it in his eyes.
Yeah,
when he's
absolutely.
talking about it, you can see there's so much sadness and there's so much depth. And I would say a dash of guilt in there.
Absolutely.
Whether it's rational or not,
Yeah.
I think that there is some of that.
Yeah, so that's my big thing is just like, I think that was the workaround. It's like, I'll talk about Bonham, and maybe that, I don't know if it's subconsciously or he did on purpose, he did acknowledge Patricia, Bonham's wife, kept telling Bonham, do not join Led Zeppelin, don't go work with Robert Plant. So maybe that was his way of talking about the death without
really
getting
addressing
into
it.
So.
And then another crucial piece of the puzzle, allegedly, at least what has been said in interviews, is that Jimmy Page didn't go to the funeral of Robert Plant's son, and that really hurt him on a severe level. And there's no time in this movie where they're all in the same room.
Yeah.
They're never talking to one another.
Yeah, that's the thing. These were 3 separate interviews done, but they're all new interviews, and that's great. And I think for them to document, to get them on video talking about themselves in the band, I think that's important.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about this movie. They really just focus on the music.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like there's so many other tangents that could have gone down. Like I said, the band manager, how the constant touring affected the families, get some outside family members talking, Jason Bonham talking growing up without a dad.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different.
All the wild things that they did, the Riot House, all that stuff.
Day on the Green in Oakland back
Yeah.
in 77. So there's so many different stories that can get into, and that can get all over. It can get messy.
Yeah.
Very
quick.
Saturated quick.
Yeah.
So I think for the sake of this, it was glad that they just focused on the music and how that brought them together.
It was very pure.
Yes, and kept it simple that way. And I think it was still a very powerful movie. Like you said, come 2 hours, it kind of abruptly ends after that performance. But I feel like there could be easily a sequel.
Oh, there could.
But
I think
it's a mini series.
but I think you could also say, and the rest is history. Because, we basically know the rest.
Yeah, and it was just cool, like full circle moment. In the beginning, John Paul Jones talking about his dad in vaudeville and how he said, Dad, I want to play bass. I want to be a musician. He's like, no, be a saxophonist. He's like, no, I want to play bass. And it was just cool. All these parents of Led Zeppelin encouraged them to play music, be creative, be an artist. So,
although he did say, if you have a saxophone, you'll always work. he was dogging on the bass big time.
But John Paul Jones started playing bass, and then come full circle after that Royal Albert Hall concert back in 1970. His dad was there and was really proud of him.
Such a cool moment.
So just cool. Like, Dad, thank you for believing in me. Let me do my thing. And I made you proud. Like, it was worth it. It all paid off in the end.
And they all got to do that at home. They brought it on home. Bring it on home. They brought it on home.
So that's the thing. Like, if I had to critique a few things, just the kind of sudden.
Oh, you're taking this shit seriously. He's trying to be a for real movie
know.
reviewer. Dennis, he's coming for you.
Siskel Ebert here. But that's the thing. It just like kind of felt abrupt at the end.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure, like you said, if you're a hardcore Led Zeppelin fan, maybe a lot of this stuff doesn't seem new to you.
Yeah.
But I think that's the point of this movie is getting new fans or
Well,
casual fans.
That brings up my question that I was going to ask you. Like, now, are you inspired to go like listen like album by album
I think so.
Yeah.
Like I don't like to,
and find your
I don't
own
know if I should-
favorite?
I don't know if I
deep
should say
cut?
this. I've never listened to a Led Zeppelin album front to back.
See, okay, then
Never
you have
have.
homework.
I never have.
Then
I just
start. We actually did this for Cody. I think I
Okay.
told you this already, but we did this for Cody. We took him down Led Zeppelin from album 1 all the way through.
Okay.
And I mean slowly over time, not in one day.
Yeah.
But just to teach him like the basics. We did that with the Stones. We've done that with Sabbath. We've done that with a lot of bands. But that's what I would tell you. I would say start in the beginning, go all the way through,
Okay.
make note of what your favorites are. Like not the hits, like what are your deep cuts? Like I have my own favorite deep cuts. They did use Thank You, that was Jay and I's wedding song.
Okay.
That moment, if you saw Jay and I like
Wait, which
crying
part was
at towards the end.
when they were all
Yeah.
like smiling, listening
Yeah.
to Bonham's voice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was our wedding song. So yeah, I want to hear what your favorites are. So you have some
Okay.
homework to do.
It's
you can
cu-
take your time, but
Yeah.
come back to me and let me know.
Well, and I'm curious though, will this movie lead to more new Led Zeppelin fans, or like, will their streaming numbers go up? Like,
I'm
should we
sure they
should we
will.
play more Led Zeppelin on the bone right now to
I've already-
maximize it? You know,
I've already been thinking about doing
Like-
Get the Lead Out again.
but you think
Dennis Willis gave us praise. Nice movie review. He's a legitimate movie reviewer. We're just over here trying, but think about it much.
Thank you, Dennis.
Think about it much.
But that's the thing. It's like, look at Cody. You know, imagine other kids between the ages of 8
Yeah.
through a teenager watching that right now. This could be their great introduction to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
They get exposed to
and
being.
so inspired.
Yes. Yeah,
You know,
totally.
I mean, Cody is very obsessed with the banjo right now, which
Yeah.
is like if you had asked me 2 years ago what instrument my kid would play, it definitely would not have come up as a banjo.
Yeah.
But
so-
I'm learning a lot. Like, so you just never know what will inspire them. And I think this movie could be that.
Yes, and I'm just thinking like, and this is probably the best thing they can do. Because listen, for years we've wanted Led Zeppelin to reunite once again.
Yeah.
Give us some new music, something. Give us something, and this is at least for the fans some form of new content that they can grab onto and just
Agreed.
enjoy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have homework to do.
Okay.
We need a book report, an album report. Good afternoon, y'all. It's always
Jose.
a treat to catch up with you guys live. Hi, Jose.
Nice movie review. From
Hey, dude, that means the world to me because Dennis is like, he goes deep.
Thank
he
you,
goes like
Dennis.
really deep. So I want to hear what Dennis has to say. Dennis, I don't know if you were on in the very, very beginning, but we said we would love to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
So to do movie reviews, I mean, you can just come on the podcast anyway,
Yeah.
but to do movie reviews.
I wonder because because you and I were trying to investigate. We don't know the full answer, but it looks like this past weekend was like the last weekend of it out, and it looked like
Yeah.
middle of the week. A lot of movie theaters are not showing it, but we're running a commercial that said
It's coming back on the 28th.
IMAX on February 28th. So I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're watching this right now, go see ASAP while you can on the big screen.
Yes.
I hope, and I'm assuming it will be a release on Blu-ray or 4K.
I'm sure.
You know, something that we can watch it again and again and again.
Yeah, I'm sure it
Streaming.
will. But on
Yeah.
the big screen, you can't replace
Yes,
that. It's
yeah.
just such a special thing to
Yeah.
be able and to see it and hear it.
Yes, exactly.
You know, just to have like even just Bonham's voice like fill up that room is just it's extra special.
Yeah.